Happy Friday, January 21st. Today's reading is Genesis chapters 25 through 38. Hope you're having a great day. Lot to cover today. So we're not going to cover anything except hit this running, and there's some of this I'm going to have to read. Let's do 4 chapters today. The third chapter has a little bit of genealogy in it, and generally when we get to genealogies, we run a little quicker. And so let's go ahead and do that today. And so if we're going to do that, chapter 38 has a lot to talk about. So let's get in it. Chapter 35, notice Jacob's going back to Bethel. Bethel means house of God, El in the Hebrew. Israel is, Prince of God. Bethel is house of God. Notice here he changes the names to El Bethel. So it's the God of the house of God, and that's important. Jacob starts being a religious man now. Starts doing things right somewhat. Notice he says putting away the strange gods. Laban had him. Rachel had him. Here we also find the death of Rachel, the birth of Benjamin. Benoni, which is what Rachel named Benjamin, means son of sorrow. And so that's why Jacob was having no part of that and named him Benjamin instead, son of my right hand. You see what Reuben does in verse 22. All we're going to say is ooh. But that also cost him being in the genealogy of Jesus Christ. We already saw why Levi and Simeon, the first two born, weren't in the genealogy of Christ, but now it's going to skip Reuben as well. Chapter 36 real quick. Esau is the father of the Edomites. If you want to flip over to Obadiah, it's just one chapter, quick reading for you, verses 3 through 4 talks about the pride of Edom. And so that was Esau's problem. And it passed down to an entire nation, and we don't even know the nation of the Edomites anymore. If you were walking by and you said, which one of those boys is God going to use? Most of us would have said Esau. He'd look at that guy. He's tough. He's a leader. He's a man of the field. But God looks at the heart. So that's certainly what happened here. And it took Jacob a while to come around. But Esau had a pride problem. So read the genealogy, maybe read it quick. Chapter 37, from this chapter to 50. Joseph is the main character. There are many parallels between Joseph and Jesus Christ. We won't cover them for this today. By the way, here in this chapter, Joseph's second dream correlates to Revelation chapter 12 and proves that Revelation chapter 12 is not talking about Mary, the woman in the sun with the stars around her head, is talking about Israel. And so you can read that another time if you like. Jacob sends Joseph to check on his brothers, a few dreams, and of course they're going to start hating him worse. Chapter 38. It's another chapter for one of Leah's kids, Judah. So here's a hypothetical question. Could God have saved Israel from starvation without Joseph's being sold? Yes, I wrote down the question. Could God have gotten Joseph in touch with Pharaoh without Potiphar's wife? And the answer to both those questions are yes. And the reason I bring those up is because this is not something that God ordained. God just worked out. Just because something is in the Bible doesn't mean it's what we're supposed to do. And I've heard somebody talk about it's the difference between description and prescription. Just because something's in the Bible doesn't mean it's something we are supposed to do or that God is condoning it. So now in chapter 38, we're going to talk about Onan's seed. And many people get this one wrong. Matthew chapter 1 skips 3 kings in the genealogy. Now, those 3 kings are not skipped because they're more evil. I was taught that when I was younger. Those 3 kings were more evil. But as long as Manasseh's in the list, that can't be the answer. And so what you find in Matthew chapter 1, those 3 kings are skipped because they are more Omri's blood, the king of Israel, than they are David's blood. And so that's corrected in 4 generations. That also answers the question of why God kills Onan here. If Jesus is of the line of Onan and Tamar, how much is he of the tribe of Judah? See, all of Judah's children are half Hebrew and half Canaanite. Tamar is a Canaanite as well. Therefore, if this happens, the person that would be in line to be in the genealogy of Jesus Christ would be only 1/4 Hebrew. That's not acceptable. You find half all through the genealogy, but you never find less than half. Onan knew this somehow because that's why he said he knew the seed shouldn't be his. Onan knew this and still had sex with Tamar. That was the problem. That's why God killed him. So Tamar and Judah end up having twins. And they are one of the twins is in the genealogy of Jesus Christ. So it's interesting. 400 years after this event that you read here in chapter 38, the book of Ruth says this, and let thy house be as the house of Pharez. Pharez turned it around. Pharez did right. Pharez was blessed so much that 400 years later they're saying, hey, let your house be like the house of Pharez. That's in Ruth chapter 4. Now, I did read these because it's hard to keep these straight. So, Pharez's family. Let's cover that real quick. Jacob, his grandpa, had 4 wives in one house. There was 1 man, 12 sons, and chaos. 2 were sisters. 2 of those wives, they hated each other. Remember, I've wrestled against my sister and prevailed. Bought her own husband for mandrakes. There was enough envy in this house that 10 conspired to kill the youngest. 1 stepped in, hey, maybe we'll let him starve, and then they sell him. I don't know anyone whose house was worse than Pharez's. Your mother, so this is from Pharez's point of view. Your father is your grandfather. Your mom is also your grandmother. Your twin is your uncle and your nephew. And the 12 sons, the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 heads, are both your uncles and your cousins. That's messed up. Your grandfather has 4 wives. They hate each other. There's fighting in the house. There's strife. Your dad slept around. And your uncles hated each other and tried to kill their younger brother. So Judah, he grows up watching where his dad's going to sleep. Probably not happy. So these 10 men lied to their dad. Judah left then to a faraway company, meets Shua, married his daughter, and Er married a woman named Tamar, by the way, so wicked that God killed him. She married Judah's then second son, Onan. God killed him as well. So Judah's stepdaughter died, and he takes a trip while grieving. Tamar hears about it, is mad, is angry, finds out where, dresses as a harlot, and goes to where her father-in-law is going to be. Enticed Judah, conceives, and again, we're still talking about Pharez's parents. Tamar then says to Judah 3 months later, I'm expecting, and Judah's response is, bring her, let's burn her. This is your mom. There's your dad. Twins are born, and one of those twins is Pharez. 400 years later, in the book of Ruth, let thy house be like the house of Pharez. You think maybe he came from a good house, a good family. Man, he didn't. And the thing we learn from that is this. You don't have to live like hell because your family does. You can come out from among it. You can come out, change everything. We get that from the story of Pharez. As you read through all this craziness, remember, Pharez made it out. I know this might have been a little bit longer, but man, chapter 38 and explaining that is worth it because so many people get that wrong. And so, hey, have a good Friday.